The year is 1935. Cleveland, Ohio shivers under the unforgiving grip of the Great Depression. Dreams wither, replaced by the harsh realities of a city struggling to survive. Yet amidst the breadlines and flickering hope, a darkness even deeper begins to take root. A shadow creeps along the banks of Kingsbury Run. This desolate stretch, once a flicker of life, becomes a macabre dumping ground. Here, a horrifying truth begins to surface. Not one, but multiple bodies, their humanity stripped away. 7 men, 5 women, the forgotten faces of Cleveland's underbelly, the homeless, the lost, the ones clinging to the fringes. These are the victims, their stories swallowed by the cold indifference of the city's struggle. The horror doesn't end there. Heads are missing. Limbs vanish as if snatched by a phantom. Sometimes these severed parts reappear in other desolate corners, a chilling taunt left by a monster shrouded in mystery. The press names the investigation the Torso Murders. A city gasps. Elliot Ness, the famed crime fighter, the man who brought down Al Capone, faces his most daunting challenge yet. This is a story of a city pushed to its limits, where the line between predator and prey blurs in the chilling twilight. Join us on Fireside Unsolved, Episode 63, as we delve into the Kingsbury Run nightmare, trace the clues left in the shadows, and confront the darkness that consumed Cleveland. Cleveland, Ohio, the 1920s, a city on a tear. Industry boomed, factories churned, and immigrants poured in, eager to fuel the city's insatiable appetite for progress. The American dream shimmered on the horizon, a promise of prosperity for the hardworking and the hopeful. But beneath the veneer of success, a different story was brewing. The Great Depression of 1929 slammed into the country like a freight train, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. Cleveland, once a symbol of progress, became a city drowning in despair. Factories shuttered, dreams evaporated, and a harsh new reality settled in. Kingsbury Run, a desolate scar on the city's map, became a microcosm of this despair. This forgotten ravine transformed into a refuge for the forgotten souls of the Depression. Train tracks snaked through the valley, a constant reminder of the world that kept moving forward, leaving those mired in poverty behind. Here, in the shadow of progress, makeshift shacks huddled together, a testament to the harsh realities of life on the edge. This was the hobo jungle, a place where the dispossessed carved out a sliver of existence. Just across the tracks pulsed a different kind of darkness, the roaring third. Saloons bled light onto the grimy streets, a siren song for the lost and the lonely. Flophouses offered a sliver of warmth for a price, and gambling dens dangled the promise of a quick escape from a life filled with misery. It was a world where desperation fueled vice, and danger lurked around every corner. While city leaders scrambled to present a facade of normalcy, Cleveland in the early 1930s simmered with desperation. The Great Depression had cast a long shadow, and the upcoming 1936 Great Lakes Exposition and Republican National Convention felt like a cruel joke. The city desperately needed a win, a reason to believe in a brighter future. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. In September 1934, a horrifying discovery shattered the fragile illusion of hope. A young man out for a stroll on the shores of Lake Erie stumbled upon a sight that would forever scar his memory. The torso of a woman, likely in her mid-30s, lay half-submerged in the water. Her thighs were still attached, but severed at the knees, a gruesome testament to a killer's brutality. Cuyahoga County Coroner A.J. Pierce arrived on the scene, noting the woman's skin had been treated with a chemical preservative, turning it a chilling red, tough, and leathery. A possible desperate attempt by the killer to delay identification? A frantic search yielded only a few other body parts, but the most crucial piece remained frustratingly absent: the head. Without it, identification was nearly impossible. The press, ever hungry for a story, christened the unfortunate victim the Lady of the Lake. This wasn't just a single tragedy, it was a chilling calling card. A monster lurked in the shadows of Cleveland, and the city's darkest chapter was about to begin. September 23, 1935, a crisp autumn day in Cleveland. But for 2 teenage boys exploring the desolate ravine of Kingsbury Run, it would be a day forever etched in their memories. At the base of Jackass Hill, where East 49th Street dead-ended into a shadowy oblivion, they stumbled upon a horrifying sight. The remains of a man. Edward Anthony Andraschi, a down-on-his-luck 29-year-old, lay sprawled in a gully. His head, a sickening contrast to the rest of his body, was buried nearby. What remained was a horrifying tableau, a body stripped of its humanity, emasculated and clad only in a pair of socks. The autopsy confirmed the worst. Andraschi had been decapitated with a chilling precision, the killer severing his spinal cord at the mid-cervical region. Rope burns around his wrists hinted at a struggle, a final desperate fight for survival. He had likely been dead for 2 or 3 days before being discovered. Andraschi's past offered little solace. Once an orderly at Cleveland City Hospital's psychiatric ward, he had fallen on hard times. Unemployed and seemingly adrift, he frequented the notorious Roaring Third, a den of vice and despair bordering Kingsbury Run. Just beside Andraschi, hidden in the weeds, lay the decapitated remains of another white male. The horror deepened as investigators noted the similarities to the Lady of the Lake. This victim, known only as John Doe No. 1, had also been soaked in oil and set ablaze after death, his skin rendered a chilling red and leathery. Then, in January 1936, a woman walking her dog stumbled upon a scene ripped from a nightmare. 2 half-bushel baskets overflowing with neatly wrapped body parts lay discarded by the Hart Manufacturing Building. The victim, a woman, had been deliberately dismembered, her remains packaged with a horrifying precision. The investigation led them to another victim, Florence Polillo, a waitress scraping by in the Roaring Third. Fingerprints confirmed her identity. Unlike John Doe 1, Florence had been decapitated after rigor mortis, a chilling detail that suggested the killer was evolving, experimenting with his gruesome methods. The city was in a state of panic. These weren't random acts of violence. This was a serial killer, a predator toying with his prey and the police. No one was safe, especially those living on the fringes, those who had fallen through the cracks of society. 6 months later, in June 1936, Kingsbury Run, shrouded in its usual cloak of despair, became the stage for another horrifying discovery. Just like months before, 2 young boys venturing into the ravine stumbled upon a sight that chilled them to the bone. A severed head wrapped in a pair of trousers lay abandoned near the East 55th Street Bridge. The horror wasn't over. The next day, Cleveland police found the body it belonged to, a young white male in his 20s, dumped unceremoniously in front of a railroad building. This victim, unlike the others, presented a chilling anomaly. His body was clean, devoid of blood, a stark contrast to the killer's usual M.O. The only sign of violence, the missing head, a gruesome signature carved into his flesh. But amidst the despair, a flicker of hope emerged. The victim had a full set of fingerprints and a series of 6 distinctive tattoos scattered across his body. This could be the break they needed, the key to identifying him and potentially linking him to the killer. Desperate for answers, the police took an unprecedented step. A plaster cast of the man's head, along with a detailed diagram of his tattoos, was put on display at the 1936 Great Lakes Exposition. Over 100,000 people flocked to see the macabre exhibit, a chilling reminder of the monster stalking Cleveland streets. But their efforts were in vain. The tattooed man, as he became known, remained a mystery. In July 1936, just a month after the tattooed man was found, a teenage girl stumbled upon another nightmare. Walking through the woods near Clinton Road in Big Creek, she came face to face with the decapitated remains of a 40-year-old white male. The stench of death hung heavy in the air, a grim marker of the killer's handiwork. The victim had likely been dead for 2 months, his body ravaged by time and the elements. His head, a sickening trophy, lay nearby, accompanied by a pile of blood-stained clothing. The sheer volume of blood at the scene painted a horrifying picture. The man had been slaughtered where he stood. This unfortunate soul became known as Victim Number 5. In September 1936, Cleveland, already teetering on the edge, plunged further into the abyss. The torso murders had become a terrifying reality, a chilling echo in the whispers of every citizen. This time, the killer's brutality was laid bare in broad daylight. A man attempting to hop a train in Kingsbury Run stumbled upon a scene that would forever scar him. The upper half of a man's torso lay abandoned near the tracks, but the horror didn't end there. A nearby sewer yielded the rest of the victim, the lower torso and legs. Over 600 onlookers turned out to watch police divers enter the sewer, some perhaps drawn by morbid fascination, others by a desperate hope to recognize the victim. The killer, it seemed, thrived on the fear he inflicted. He may have even been among the gawking crowd, a chilling thought that sent shivers down spines across the city. This unfortunate soul, forever known as victim number 6, remained unidentified. But the autopsy revealed a chilling detail. The clean, deliberate dismemberment suggested a confident killer, one with a disturbing familiarity with human anatomy. The victim had most likely been killed with a single swift stroke, a horrifying display of the killer's growing efficiency. By the fall of 1936, the police department finally took a decisive step. Detectives Peter Merillo and Martin Zalewski were assigned to the case full-time, tasked with delving into the city's underbelly and finding the monster responsible. These detectives weren't afraid to get their hands dirty. They donned disguises, infiltrated the seedy underworld of Kingsbury Run and the Roaring Third, becoming shadows within the shadows. Over the course of the investigation, they interviewed a staggering 1,500 people, their tireless efforts a testament to the city's desperation for answers. This wasn't just Merillo and Zalewski's fight. It was a citywide effort. The Cleveland Police Department mobilized, conducting over 5,000 interviews in total. The Torso Murders had become the biggest investigation in the city's history, a desperate attempt to break the cycle of terror. Meanwhile, the November elections brought about a shift in leadership. Harold Burton retained his position as mayor, but a new face emerged in the medical examiner's office, the young and brilliant Samuel Gerber. This doctor, a future legend, wasn't just skilled in medicine, he also held a law degree. This unique combination of expertise made him a crucial player in the investigation. Dr. Gerber's dedication to both medicine and justice propelled him to the forefront of the case, a beacon of hope in a city drowning in fear. But looming over the investigation was a figure with a national reputation, Elliot Ness. The man who brought down Al Capone, the leader of the Untouchables, was now Cleveland's public safety director. He held authority over the police department, and his role in the Torso Murders would become a controversial chapter in his storied career. The winter of 1937 brought no respite from the terror. In February, the gruesome tide washed ashore another victim. The upper half of a woman's torso, unlike the previous victims, bore the chilling mark of a new development. She had been decapitated after death. The lower half of her body wouldn't surface until months later, a grim testament to the Cuyahoga River's role in the killer's twisted game. This unidentified woman in her mid-20s became another tragic statistic, another life snuffed out in the darkness. The horror continued in June. A teenager exploring under the Lorraine Carnegie Bridge stumbled upon a human skull. Beside it lay a burlap sack, its grim contents, the skeletal remains of a petite 40-year-old black woman. Dental records provided an unofficial identification, Rose Wallace of Scoville Avenue. But leads went cold, leaving her story shrouded in mystery. By July 1937, labor unrest gripped Cleveland's Flats district. National Guard troops patrolled the streets, a grim reminder of the city's fragile peace. One such young guardsman, stationed near the West 3rd Street Bridge, witnessed a sight that would forever scar him. In the wake of a passing tugboat, a horrifying discovery bobbed to the surface, a fragment of a human body. This was the first piece of victim number 9, a man in his mid-30s who would never be identified. Over the next few days, the Cuyahoga River yielded the rest of his body, minus the head. A new level of savagery was evident. The killer had gutted the abdomen and ripped out the heart, a chilling display of escalating brutality. The terror wasn't confined to land. The Cuyahoga River, once a vital artery of commerce, became a macabre dumping ground. In April 1938, a young worker spotted a gruesome sight along the riverbank, a woman's leg. This was the first piece of victim number 10, a woman who would forever remain nameless. The investigation revealed another disturbing element. Drugs were detected in her system. Were they used to subdue her before her gruesome demise? The answer remained buried in the murky depths, along with the victim's missing arms. The summer of 1938 brought a horrifying escalation. 3 scrap collectors stumbled upon a gruesome scene, a woman's torso nestled within a man's blazer, wrapped in a quilt. Nearby, a makeshift box held her legs and arms, meticulously wrapped and secured. Coroner Gerber noted a chilling detail. Some body parts appeared refrigerated, suggesting a calculated storage method. But this wasn't the only horror that day. A mere yards away, the remains of another victim, victim number 11, were discovered. It was as if the killer was taunting the authorities, daring them to stop him. Neither of these victims would ever be identified. These gruesome discoveries had a chilling proximity. They were found within view of Elliot Ness's office window. The man who brought down Al Capone, now Cleveland's public safety director, was facing a monster unlike any he had encountered before. His reputation, once untarnished, would forever be tarnished by the Torso Murders. August 18, 1938. A date etched in Cleveland's memory for all the wrong reasons. Elliot Ness, facing mounting pressure and public outrage, made a desperate gamble. At the helm of a task force of 35 officers, he descended upon the shanty towns of Kingsbury Run, the epicenter of the terror. 63 men were rounded up, their meager belongings tossed aside in the frantic search for clues. But the raid yielded nothing. In a scene reminiscent of a war zone, the remaining shacks were then doused in kerosene and set ablaze. The flames roared, a horrifying symbol of a city at its wits' end. The press lambasted Ness for his actions. The public remained gripped by fear and a suffocating sense of helplessness. Critics denounced the raid as a barbaric act of desperation, and time would prove them right. The hunt for the killer continued, a desperate scramble for answers. In July 1939, a glimmer of hope emerged. County Sheriff Martin O'Donnell arrested Frank Dolezal, a 52-year-old bricklayer, for the murder of Florence Polillo. Dolezal, it turned out, had known both Polillo and Edward Andraschi, adding a layer of suspicion. But the confession he offered was a bizarre mix of mumbling and disturbingly precise details, as if he'd been fed information. Before facing trial, Dolezal was found dead in his cell, hanging from a hook that was inexplicably positioned too low for a successful suicide. An autopsy by Dr. Gerber revealed a chilling truth. Dolezal had suffered 6 broken ribs while in custody. Few, if any, believed Dolezal was the torso killer. His death, shrouded in suspicion, became another grim chapter in a case overflowing with unanswered questions. To this day, the Cleveland Torso Murders remain a chilling testament to the darkness that can lurk within a city. 12 victims, their lives snuffed out with a horrifying brutality. A city paralyzed by fear, a killer who vanished into the shadows. We've explored the victims, we delved into the investigation, we unraveled the suspects. But the most haunting aspect remains unanswered. Who was the torso killer or killers? Was it a single sadistic mind or a conspiracy shrouded in secrecy? Theories abound. A medical professional with a twisted knowledge of anatomy, a butcher with a dark vendetta, even a satanic cult. The lack of a definitive answer continues to gnaw at Cleveland's soul. The murders became a part of the city's identity, a dark stain on its history. The once vibrant Kingsbury Run, forever linked to the horror, slowly faded away, eventually demolished to make way for a parking lot. The Torso Murders may be unsolved, but their memory lives on, a reminder of the fragility of life, the depths of human depravity, and the enduring quest for justice. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Fireside Unsolved. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to help the channel grow. Until next time, take it easy and be easy, you filthy bastards.